So, good morning and welcome to Better Waste Services podcast. I don't even know what number this is. I've lost count. As always, I'm with Louise Lambourne and our special guest, Gareth Rawlings. Welcome to both of you.
Morning.
Morning, Tim.
Good intro, Tim.
So, thank you very much. I've been practicing.
You have.
So, yeah, I have lost track of how many we've done. I think it's about 8 or 9. So we'll see what number's on it when it gets published.
And are we improving? Are we getting better with every episode? That's what I want to know.
Right now, it doesn't feel like it.
Okay.
But we'll see how this develops.
Let's see what happens. I will score them out of 10. I'll listen back to them all.
Yeah.
How many listening hours that could actually be.
The only way is up, as they say.
Yeah, so they say. But yeah, so I'm actually next to Gareth in our little podcast studio here, and you're obviously at the Bartek studio up north.
Up north in South Yorkshire, yes.
Yeah.
So welcome both of you. And we usually start these things with a bit of an intro on our guests because everybody's fed up of knowing who we are. So Gareth,
go for it.
Please introduce yourself and tell us how you ended up in the waste industry.
Wow, okay. So, my name's Gareth Rawlings. So I'm currently the head of waste at West Sussex County Council. Prior to that, I spent about 12 years in waste working for Arran District Council. So I've sort of covered waste collections and then moved into waste disposal. And separately to that, I'm also on the LARIC, which is the Local Authority Recycling Advisory Committee. And I'm a national rep for that. So I've been doing that for the last 4 years. Something I really enjoy. How did I get into waste? Interestingly, by mistake, probably like most people.
Everybody says that.
Yeah, we do hear that quite a bit. I don't know where this accidental career path comes from.
Well, I joined, I was working at Marriott Hotels, and there was lots of people who were staying there who worked for IBM. And obviously at the time, IBM were like a really big, powerful IT company. And when I was sort of checking out these people in their rooms, it gave you an idea of how much spend was going on the IBM account. And I was a bit like, wow, so this isn't the waste bit. But basically I said to the guy, how do I get into that? Because I'd like some of that, you know.
Yeah.
And it was all about IT at the time. So I went down, basically paid for myself to become a Microsoft trained engineer. From an IT perspective, I'd always been interested in IT anyway. So I had quite a good instinct for computing and stuff like that. So then, when I sort of done my qualification, I then went for a job at Arran District Council, working in the IT department as an IT help desk technician. Many moons ago, that must have been 20 odd years ago now, because I think my daughter was born. And I was on the high salary of I always remember £11,100 a year. And I was driving there to Littlehampton from Chichester, probably taking home about £600 a month after I paid all my bills and everything. And, so I started my journey on a 2-year sort of fixed term contract. Then turned into be like a network role. So I was looking after networking and routers. And one of my jobs there was to look after the email system back when we used to have automatic email blockage.
You're really
like
trying to show an age here.
Try not to.
You're not doing yourself any favours.
I am a youngster. I'm a young 45. So I still think that's classed as young.
That's young.
So as part of that, I used to have to review the email system and let through emails and not let through emails and stuff. And I let an email out for someone and spoke to him we had a fire alarm that day, and spoke to him in the car park and said, just let you know, I let that. It was a job application. I won't say who it was to. I let it out. And he went, thanks for that. And I went, I've got to find something else. I've got a family now. I need more money and that. And he went, I've got a job coming up in the waste team. But really, we're looking for someone who does IT, because we've got a new contract management system that we're putting in. A company called Northgate, and then you might have heard of them.
M3.
Yeah, M3. It was M3, funny enough. It was Northgate M3.
Yeah.
So it sat on a shelf at Arran for about 5 years before it had been put in place. The guy who was then going to implement it left, so they needed to replace him. So I thought, I've got nothing to lose, so let's give it a go. So I done the application form, went for the interview. I felt the interview went really well, and then they offered me the role. And I was quite taken aback, because it was assistant manager. So I sort of went straight from being a sort of IT network person to the assistant manager. And I was 20. I must have been in my young 20s then.
Big jump.
It was, and I didn't, at the time, I don't think I thought much of it. I just sort of thought, I think I can do that, and I think I'm quite a reasonable chap. So I went in, done a lot of work on the system, And then through various reasons, people above me went off long term, and then left, which sort of left me in this position of being the assistant manager, but being in charge. And I remember having a conversation with the human resources lady, and she said, you've sort of got two choices. You can either try it, try and run things, because people are off and they were signed off for long times, or you can let someone else come in and do it. The choice is yours, really, but you haven't really got anything to lose. So why don't you have a go? So for about 5 or 6 months, I just sort of stepped up and ran things. And I thought it went reasonably well, and I think everyone else sort of thought it went reasonably well. So
you're still going?
Yeah. So when I come back, I sort of then the cleansing manager left, and I went for that job and got that job, and never really looked back then, and sort of moved up from that job to the job at West Sussex, which again was more contract management. They needed someone who could do contract management, had new contracts, obviously relationships. It was local, so he'd had a relationship with West Sussex already, and I got on quite well with the people there, and I sort of knew what they were about. So I went to West Sussex, really enjoyed that.
How long have you been at West Sussex?
So 8 years now. Okay. And it was a funny one because I went from this position where I was managing a whole team at Aaron, went to the job at West Sussex and had no staff. I was on the senior management team, but had no staff to manage. So for about 6 months, I was sort of managing we'd built a big mechanical biological treatment plant, really, really big contract. I think when the contract was signed, it was a £1 billion contract. It was ginormous. So I sort of went into contract, managed that, and it was just getting finished off and signed up to be working. So I spent most of my time driving down to Horsham, working up the plant with different people, but I had no staff. It was quite a release of like, I've got no staff now. That's actually quite nice for a while. And then there was a sort of a restructure, and they sort of made 2 manager positions. So I went for one of those and got that role. And then the other manager left a bit later, so I then picked up the head of waste role. I must be in year 4 now. So I can't remember exact dates, but I think it's probably year 4, year 3 being the head of waste. So, and I've quite enjoyed that. And then sort of set up my team under me with some management. So people reporting to me have got different roles and stuff. So it was a bit of a strange luck, really. If that fire alarm hadn't happened that day, then it's very unlikely that conversation would have happened. Yeah. And I made that application form. It's just crazy.
Always where you're meant to be, they say. So maybe that was just your journey. How did you kind of get into the Larrick role, and when?
So I think I've been voted in twice. So I think I'm in my 4th year. Just started my 5th year. I think you do 2 years, and you either stand again and get voted back in if anyone else stands against you. And I think so. Larrick, West Sussex were members of Larrick anyway. I'd been to quite a few of their conferences, and I recognised them as being sort of like the industry leader for waste advice and stuff like that. So they sent the newsletter out and said, we're looking, if anyone wants to stand, we've got some vacancies. I think they had 3 positions, 2 people were restanding and 1 person wasn't. So they had like a free space. So I put myself forward. And in fact, it was the person that employed me at West Sussex, I say his name, Kevin Carter, who's now running Chis District Council, sort of said to me, have you seen this? Have you thought about going for it? You'd be really good at it. And I think sometimes you having that little push or that little bit of someone external to say, have you thought about this? You go, well, actually, I could do that. So I applied for it, and I always remember you had to do like a statement, sort of advertising who about just talking about you. So of course my statement was, I can't remember what I said now, but it's like, my name's Gareth Rowlands, I've worked in waste, and gave a little bit of information. Then when the stuff came out for voting, two of the guys, so Andrew Bird, who's been on Larrick for a long time, and another guy, theirs were like, well, I've been on Larrick for 20 years, and I'm thinking, well, I've got, they're definitely getting in, so I'm up against this other person now. Luckily I won what they would have called the voting system, and got onto it, and then I just like got onto that. It was sort of just after, it must have been 2020, because it was when 2018 had gone, when all the sort of new waste regulations were sort of being murmured. 2020 was when we started responding to consultations, so I got straight involved with Larrick on working like workshops, chairing workshops on, online and stuff like that. Must have been around the code, just after the code, because it was all online. So suddenly got involved in that, and it gave you a bit more confidence that you were leading these groups. And because of so when you go to the conference, which I know you both attend, as part of the sort of you volunteering for Larrikes, you end up like doing workshops. So I was chairing, suddenly you're straight chairing workshops, getting it something I hadn't done before, and you're a bit, that first one, you're always a bit,
I'm terrified of all of that kind of stuff, I'm not going to lie. Tim's a natural at it, because I saw him, he invited me to one of his bug user groups, and he asked me to talk about what we did with a new starter of his called John Smith. And I have never been so terrified in all my life to standing in front of people. I mean, if you try and find it, it's the worst thing you've ever listened to. I was supposed to do 15 minutes. I think I did about 2. And poor John then had to take over. And he didn't know anything of what he was talking about because he was brand new. And it was horrific. But Tim's just like natural in front of people. And I've tried to improve that side of things. I don't think I could do a workshop though. I think I would. I don't know, is it easier? You've done workshops, haven't you, Tim? Is it easier?
I had a nightmare at Larrick this year. Geraldine completely sucker punched me. Just going into dinner the night before, she said, "Oh, would you be on a panel for us tomorrow?" I was already meant to be speaking. I got all that prepared, so that was all good for the late morning. They said, "Will you do a panel?" I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll join a panel." What's it about? Oh, it's about waste tracking. I said, "Well, I don't know anything about waste tracking." She said, "Oh no, it's just trucks and stuff." I thought, I'm pretty sure it isn't that, but I'll rock up and be on a panel. I then arrived to find out that I was the panel, and what I thought was going to be 15 minutes was actually an hour and a half, including running some workshops. So yeah, I was completely suckered, but.
I'm not going to lie, I did find that whole thing really amusing because then John went down to go and see if Tim was all right in this room. And he comes back and he goes, he's literally on his own in there at the moment. I was like, is he okay? What for him is this? What is about to happen in there? I did find that quite amusing. But is it...
No, the best thing was when I arrived and Sophie said, "So have you got any slides?" I was like, "I found out this at 8 o'clock last night. No, I don't have any slides." I have this smile. That's all I have.
And was it a good workshop?
I don't know. It was all a bit of a blur.
Well, you're definitely a braver man than I am.
Yeah.
Bless you.
I think it's just thrown. I mean, sometimes for me, it's just I don't think I'd got involved in a great deal when I was at Arran. I got involved more in the waste world at West Sussex, really. And I did some work with we were working with Ricardo, so I have a lady called Sarah Jane Woodstone. Do you know Sarah Jane?
No, I mean John Woodruff works at Ricardo.
Yeah, she was at Ricardo at the time, and she came and worked at Arran for a bit, just when I was putting the contract together, and she sort of gave me some additional confidence and help and support as well. Get involved in that. So that I sort of when I went to West Sussex, I got my CRWM full membership because I hadn't really given it much thought when I was at Arran. So I sort of did that. So that gave me again a bit more confidence, and did some talking on booking systems and bits and pieces. And I sort of got to the point where you get asked to do something, it's like, whereas previously I might have gone, "Oh, that sounds a bit, not me." Actually, now got a bit older and a bit more sort of skilled and stuff. It's actually gone, okay. And I was asked to speak at, I forgot what it's called, the recycling show in Birmingham. I sort of got pulled up to go and do some talk on fire. There, and then at the same time I did a panel which was really good. It was a bit out of my comfort zone, and one of the questions I got asked, I was like, I can't answer, I don't know what to say, I just don't know. And that's probably my worst fear, because when you sort of get asked, you just don't know the answer. And I was like, I just didn't have an answer at all, and I just thought, and he come to me first, so it made it even worse. Yeah. But I had some staff there and spoke to them and said, "How did that come across?" Because I think you're always, to me, there's always this natural thing that when you're doing stuff, you are worried about, how am I coming across, how am I looking, how am I talking, am I going too fast, am I going too slow, people interested, and, people feedback I tend to get is positive. I wouldn't say I'm definitely not the best at speaking, I'm definitely not the best at sharing.
I think that putting yourself out of your comfort zone is something that is a good thing anyway. If I hadn't have done what the thing at Bug, I wouldn't have then led on to be able to now do our event, which we did July, and that was my most confident I've ever been talking in front of people. You've got to start somewhere, haven't you? And these podcasts, again, if you go back to the first one we ever did, which I often do just to remind myself.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't go back to the first one you did.
And you can see how more relaxed it all is now, and we've kind of just fallen into place. And I like the fact that I don't know, did you feel like you were out of your comfort zone a little bit when we started doing the podcast? Because it was so new to us, wasn't it?
Yeah, I had absolutely no idea what we were doing, and I think that came across. But I think I think, like you say, Gareth, some of it comes with age, doesn't it? You get to the point where you realise no one dies doing this stuff. You know, the worst case that happens is you make a bit of a tit of yourself for 10 minutes, then you sit down. And if you have a go, then you'll probably be a little bit better than you were last time. And then the time after that, you'll be a little bit better again. We're never going to be professional podcasters, but I hope what we are doing is we're natural, and we're just having a chat, and that's what we're trying to do.
There's thousands or millions.
Yeah, I love that. I want to be heard. I don't know. I like the idea of doing this, and I tell you what I really like about this is, even if only one person ever listens to any of the podcasts that we do with Better Waste Services, is that someone might learn something at another council, and it may help them make a different decision that will benefit that council. And also, I'm learning. I don't know. So we'll go on to in a second about the award you're up for, and then on to the food waste, because I actually don't know a lot about food waste, and it's something that I really want to learn about, because a lot of people do commingled in with garden waste, which is my topic, and I'm interested in every area of waste now, as is Tim, and that's why we did this podcast. Really, it wasn't because of any. It was just two mates chatting about things. We've both got different opinions on a lot of things, so it was quite nice to. We'd always get together and talk crap to each other about things, and we're like, why don't we record it and let everyone else listen to us do that?
I mean, there's a lot. So one of the reasons I love doing the Larrick conference is because you see such a vast number of different people. It's good. It's always good to catch up with the sponsors. So, I always go and speak to certain people at the sponsors, because obviously I've known them. So Tony Vargas, who's at Storm, I've known Tony. He's the first person I met. I went to Torquay. I think it was the last time I was there. I met Tony. He was working for a different company at the time. Really hit it off with him. We're very, very similar, family life and stuff like that. And we've become quite I class a good friend as someone that I can speak to. We can have a laugh with, and then go apart, and then he'd come back together and have a laugh again. So Tony would come down sometimes. I was at Aaron, we'd go out for lunch and stuff like that. We weren't the biggest spenders, but actually the relationship's really good, and I've been friends with him for 20 years. And, I follow him wherever he's gone, so he ends up with Storm and stuff. So you've got that longevity in sort of like having relationships. I met ERP, so David over at ERP, European Recycling Platform, great guy from Wales. We again sat at his table at the Larrick conference. We met through the Recycling Awards.
We did meet through that.
Just
That's
having a laugh
one of my favourites.
on the table before I'll get over the fact he didn't award me yet.
I didn't judge your award. He was very upset, Tim. And Tim set me up royally at that event again. So last year, no one knew, because what's his name? Mark Duncan Smith.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so Tim, have you ever done one of those the Awards of Excellence before? Was that your first year as well?
Last year, yes. Yes. So this year was the second time, wasn't it?
Yeah. So it was both our first time. Anyway, we're going to the massive room, same place, and this guy comes up to me and just starts asking me questions. Now I didn't know who it was. I mean, he was very attractive. I didn't mind talking to him. And I instantly realised, hang on a minute, you're asking me lots of weird questions. Anyway, he asked everyone so he could annihilate them on stage later that night. He was definitely worse the first year than he was the second. Anyway, then as I was walking off stage, he referred to me something to do with SAS, I don't know. Anyway, so I basically swore at him as I was walking back to my seat. So this year I was really careful on everything that I said, and he kind of left me alone. And then at the end he goes, and I'd just like to share a picture of Lou from last year. And then both these massive screens with someone swearing. It wasn't me, thankfully. But then I found out that it was Tim that reminded him.
Oh, nice.
I was like, oh my God, his memory's amazing. No, Tim had done that.
That's
I was
what
like,
friends are for.
Cheers, mate. But so he was a couple of tables away. Obviously, we're with you, and there was someone else that won an award on our table, and
Not me. not my
So,
team.
as soon as the value didn't raise, I cheers. I was like, I didn't judge that one. There's 2 judging panels, and I wasn't on that one. It wasn't my fault. But all of the people that were up for awards were there for a reason.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not that
it's
you,
brilliant,
like I said to you earlier, it's not that you didn't win. Everyone that you lost, sorry, you just didn't win. It's everyone there was valued, and I think they all had really good applications. I have it here, Tim. It's in my bag. Do you know how ridiculous it is? It's because there I am at the front.
Throwing it off on the picture.
I carry it because there's me at the front, and it makes me laugh. Where are you? There we go. Look. So you were up for the award in the category of the best local authority recycling initiative, and that was a fierce.
There was a lot of people.
It was a fierce one. You had, oh goodness, you were up against some really difficult ones there, if I'm honest. Tell me about your one then.
So who won that one, Louise?
Veolia. It was Ed again. Ed.
Yeah.
My mate Ed,
Flashback
who's
now.
on Larrick with me. I love Ed to bits, and me and Ed have an ongoing joke that whenever Westminster up for an award, they seem to win it, and Ed always beats me. So if I'm in a category with Ed, it's just
They had like 9 tables this year, didn't they, Veolia?
yeah. So
It's almost like they've got a massive marketing team, isn't it, racing their award?
I celebrate when Ed doesn't win. That's how bad it is.
Yeah.
People at Larrick Awards, they got to the very last award, I think, and Ed hadn't gone up yet, and then they won. And I'm like, I can't believe it, he's won again. But they've obviously Westminster. There's a lot of money in Westminster, so it's obviously a bit.
Oh, that's what it is. Oh.
Yeah. So R1. So yeah, we quite a while ago, there's a company called, I don't know, they're a charity, I guess, called UK Harvest, and they what they do is they go around picking up surplus food. So it really just started off really surplus food from like farmers. So it'd be fruit and veg. So obviously, if you're Tesco's and you want someone to sell you carrots, the farmers grow an horrendous amount of carrots.
Yeah.
They take a certain amount of the carrots, but then there's a certain amount of carrots that are obviously left over.
Yeah.
So what UK Harvest did was they went around, started getting sort of this food that was available. Then it sort of branched out and got involved also in supermarkets and stuff like that. So they get some of the excess food supermarkets would normally chuck away. So back in my early years, when I was 16, 30 years ago, we used to, any food that was going out of date, we used to put out the back. And the local pig farm guy was allowed to come around, and he always used to annoy me back then. It was, you could have a full pallet of these crates of old food. It's like, well, he's allowed to have 2. You have to chuck the rest in the skip. So I'd be chucking, so we've moved on, thankfully. There were things like Too Good To Go and stuff like that. So UK Harvest, what they do is they then get this food. They then do a number of what we call hubs. So they've got one where I first got involved in it was my parents live opposite Oving Village Hall. They go in there, you go in, you pay a little fee, £2.50 or something, £2.50 £3, I think it's. It might be up to a £5 now. It was an old time ago when I first started doing it. My parents would go in there. So it's not like a food bank. It's, we've got this food, we need to get rid of it. We'd rather see it being reused. So residents could go there. There'd be in all sorts, herbs, vegetables, fruit, obviously surplus bread, some milk. Could be quite random as to what items would be there. And the residents would come along to it. So, and I've been a few times, I'll go over there with my parents at Christmas and stuff, and it was a really good vibe and that. So we done some work with my sort of communications team, my waste communications team, and we had like almost like we had a session, like a brainstorm session. What can we do? What can we get involved in? And at the time, it was around, we had the cost of living issues going on, and we sort of started off with, what about, have we got any local influencers? So we looked at some of the influencers that may be around in local area, but then we sort of realised that actually they may not be the best route to go. And I think, I can't remember, it might have been me, it might have just been a joint group one. I just said, well, we've been trying to do some stuff with UK Harvest. How about we approach them and see what they might be able to do? So what we've done was we put together sort of a programme of how much would it cost for us to put some extra hubs on. And as part of that, what we'll also do is we'll do some cookery lessons. So we'll have a few special ones, so every 3 months do like a cookery course and stuff like that. Give away some free items like slow cookers. But also we'd have a stand separate to so you'd have the event, the UK Harvest Hub, and we'd also then bring other people along. So the first one might have been the waste team giving out recycling advice. The second one might have been community safety. The third one might have been other health. So different types of help that the council provide, public health and stuff. Volunteers, so it was all, volunteers would come along in it. And what we could see was that the hubs really took off in terms of help for the local people in those areas. And, we were doing a few surveys and, introducing some of these people, hadn't really had fruit, veg and stuff like that. And now this was available to them and giving them a good idea of how they could cook it and use it. So it just sort of really kicked off. So we did the first bit was a trial. And then what we quickly moved into was we had a program where we then were able to basically run it out for a period of time at different sites. It was one I think I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was one a month in each district and borough. So it was 7 in total per month. It just took off. It just went really well. It went really, really well. And the staff, from my perspective, the staff that were involved in it, the volunteers that were involved in it, the feedback we were getting internally was this real feel-good factor as well from the going along, being able to help out for a few hours and then sort of coming back to the office. It was nice for the team to be involved in that. So it went really, really well. So yeah.
No, it was I think anything to do with food waste reduction is a good thing, and I think educating people about it is key, because I didn't even know how many things are destroyed on farms because it doesn't look the right way, or it's not what they were looking for, it's not the right size or colour, and then they get rid of it. I know there's a company called Oddbox that buys some of that, and I do use Too Good to Go. Yeah. I only found out about that in June, and then I was like, and we were at a caravan site in Oxford, and I was like, there's a pastry shop round the corner. I wonder if they're in on it. I am partial to a cake. Sure enough, they were. £3 this stuff. I had to pick it up by 6:15, so I sent the husband out to go and get it. He came back with all this stuff. I was like, oh my God. I mean, it was just so much food. And I ended up sharing it with the caravan next door as well, because I was like, this is just too much food for one person. So, and that's just like waste that would have gone. I mean, obviously I didn't waste it. It was all cake and pastries. But yeah, it was surprising how much stuff they had that was just one shop in one small place. So I really like that initiative generally.
I think there's quite a bit of. Sorry, I think there's quite a few initiatives going on to sort of join up the sort of reuse and the sustainability bit with the waste collection. I don't know if you're aware of Company Shop, which is started up quite close to us and is now being bought by Biffa. And that's taking surpluses from retailers. And originally it was you had if you worked for one of the retailers that contributed into the scheme, then you could go to that shop, which is just outside Sheffield, and buy all the stuff. And I got to know it because my wife's a nurse, so the blue light employees are part of it as well. So I think the waste management industry is looking at that sort of supply side of it and saying, well, it's a great bit of circularity if you can pick it up, but instead of incinerating it or landfilling it or recycling it, you can actually properly reuse it in a socially responsible way. That's obviously a good part of the circular economy.
Yeah.
The businesses really. I mean, I remember standing outside Starbucks in Chichester years ago. It was late one night when I was probably waiting around for someone, and just seeing them scanning and just chucking in basically in a sack, ready to be waste collection. It wasn't being reused or anything. And I just remember thinking, what an absolute waste of food that is just to be doing that with. And I think businesses now, like you say, with Too Good to Go. I mean, I live near Chichester, and we haven't got. There isn't. It's like you say, if you go to London, it's page and page.
Yeah. It does depend on where you are.
It's very limited.
But then you've got other ones, haven't you? Olio.
Yeah.
I found out about Olio. Yeah. Because I often have food that I'll buy for something, and then I'm like, I'm never going to use half a bag of orzo. Like again, it was a pain to cook this dish. I'm never going to do it again. So I've got this I bought a massive bag of it. So I put that on, and someone collected it within half an hour. I was like, Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was genius. And I've done it a few times now, and I really like that initiative. Now that kind of leads us on to the food waste, nicely, some might say. So obviously, Simpler Recycling now says that food waste has to be collected weekly for free as of 26. In this, where we have just trialled it in mid-Sussex.
Yeah, so we were part of that.
Yeah, so we've only just tried it one side of town, but it's not come over to me yet. And I actually don't know many people, because a lot of my friends are quite local, that have actually done food waste. So food waste is a completely new thing to me. And we did a podcast with Hayley Clough, one of our first ones actually, wasn't it? In the studios.
I'd be the first video one,
Yeah.
It was the first one with a guest. Yes.
Yeah, and she was
Hayley from Hounslow.
About food waste. And that was really my first introduction to the whole concept of it. And I really like the idea of obviously collecting food waste. But what have you got to say about food waste? What's going on?
So the story for food waste for me started in 2018 when the government sort of come out with their big paper to say we're kind of bringing it in, and then sort of between 2018 and 2024 I've sort of lived it every year in different aspects through different reasons. So obviously now it's starting to feel a lot more real, so that's obviously a big positive. And we had a long time where we were doing lots of work consultations. It was all very hypothetical, and that's really difficult, because when you're speaking hypothetically about, well, we could do this and we could do that, it doesn't really all go in. Where Sussex as a council was in a funny situation. So they had decided to build a mechanical biological treatment plant, which was the job I went into manage when I first started there in 2016. Make sure that's the right date. So there's obviously a lot of money, big contract. As part of that process, the mechanical biological treatment plant receives black bag waste, which obviously at the moment has food in it, and then through the process, it basically extracts organic material from the black sack. And it separates out sort of like sand and grit and stone and metal, so it sort of separates some stuff out. It's not perfect, because as you can imagine, nothing's clever enough to go, that's a piece of food. You know, if you've put a tomato in your bin at home, the odds of it going into a refuse truck, making its way to a transfer station, being bulked up at a transfer station, being delivered to the MBT, and then going to a pit and then going through the process, it's very, very unlikely that tomato is still going to be a nice round tomato. So it's very hit and miss. A lot of stuff that was going through to the anaerobic digestion side of that process wasn't food. So the decision that we had to make originally was, what do we do? Because we were in this contract till 2035. That's a long way away. We could have applied for transitional arrangements. We sort of made a decision. We didn't think that was the right thing to do. What I would have done was that would have stopped all of the district and borough councils in West Sussex who do collection from doing food waste. So we felt that wasn't the right thing to do. So we sort of made the decision in 2020 to convert the facility into a anaerobic digestion plant. So I pretty much did a lot of that work in 2020, and then we're then in a position really where we're ready to sort of go. Fast forward to 2022, we were obviously still waiting. It was only end of last year where we really got the last bit from government saying we've got dates and stuff now. So I had to sort of pull out the business case, refresh it, make sure what we had agreed or we're looking to do was still the right thing to do. And there was some things that were in that early business case which were around things like we were going to carry on trying to capture metals and stuff, and actually we sort of realised that the spend we're going to spend on it isn't really going to work, so we're not going to do that. So where it's left sort of my team now, they're managing a massive, what I call infrastructure project of converting the MBT into an anaerobic digestion plant. You know, it's a lot of money for us. It's an investment. I think it's 15 million investment on that project. Might just be a little bit more actually. They're basically stripping out the entire contents of the facility we've got, and sort of redoing it all. So that project started and hopefully will be done in time before the new changes. We've then got my transfer stations. So I've got 5 transfer stations. So I've got to try and get food waste into those. Again, that's another couple of £1 million sort of financial
Is it
spend.
going to be rolled out slowly? Because that seems to be what they're... I know there's been loads of testing going on, because they were trialling it on one side of this town. is it going to be a slow process?
So the district and borough councils are talking about rolling out. They'll do households first, and then they'll look at flats as like a second part of the process, because flats are so very hard to deal with waste disposal, collection side of it. So they'll probably go for the easy route first with just the households. It doesn't really help me, because obviously I can't part change the plant. Mm-hmm. I'm either all in or all out sort of thing. So there is a bit here where it makes it difficult for me. I can't run a service that has food separate, but also then has a second service where food's still in the black bag. So we're still working out how all that's going to work. District and borough councils obviously have they've got a lot of work on their hands, because they've got to move relatively fast. They've got to go back to members and get permission to sign stuff off. So they've been given their first chunk of money, which is the capital expenditure on vehicles and bins and stuff like that. What they haven't been told yet is how much they're going to get for their revenue, which is like the ongoing costs. I haven't had that information yet. So you're sort of going to members with like, we need 9 trucks. We've got money for 8 trucks or money for 7 trucks, because for a lot of the authorities, the money they've been allocated really the money that the government put by hasn't been sort of escalated up to take into account the last 4 years of increases and changes that have happened in just everywhere, really. So most of them are facing some tough decisions about how many vehicles they can put on, and it doesn't necessarily flow that if you introduce 9 food trucks, you can pull off 2 or 3 refuse trucks. They're very much talking about keeping their refuse numbers the same and then introducing food as well. So they've got some difficult choices, and then you start thinking about things like depots. Most of the depots that have been operated were built in the 70s and 80s. They weren't built for expansion. No one's expanded. We've seen growth in household numbers go up, but even in the last 10 years, I think it's 11% growth in household numbers in Sussex, which means they're tight for space. So even for me, the transfer station, I'm trying to retrospectively fit a food waste solution into a transfer station that was already struggling to deal with the materials. So when those transfer stations were first built, you really had sort of 2 things going on. You were doing well, they were built at the time when we were using landfill, so you had no recycling. So a transfer station was taking in black bag waste, and that was being taken off and down to landfill, was going direct to landfill. Now it's like green waste is going in there. Some of the stuff from the recycling centre residents bringing is going in there. General waste is going in there. Recycling is going in there to be bulked up and taken off. So you've now split that transfer station to so many different compartments. And now you're going, and by the way, we'd like another one now.
Is every council going to have this as a problem?
I think so, because a lot of people, I think 50% of the councils already had food. So
really, that high?
I think it was relatively high, the groups that already had it. And you've also got the situation where, depending on where you're based, you might have a third-party food waste disposal solution. Yeah. So if you're in London, for example, there's quite a few food waste places around to take you to. In West Sussex, with anything, there's absolutely it's sort of like where we're located. Well, I can't go to France or the Isle of Wight, so you can't go that way, and there's nothing that way. So there just isn't anything there to be able to accept it. And we've also had, there's been other things that have happened over the last couple of years. So have you heard of POPs and pollutant organic stuff with the sofas and stuff? I'm surprised that's not come up. So EA have been quite tough on us in terms of how we treat sofas. So as an example, if you were to have this sofa for 10 years and give it to your neighbour, that's absolutely fine. But if you had this sofa for 10 years and took it to one of our waste sites, we have to segregate it and take it off to high incineration because it contains pollutant organic material.
Nice.
Listen to organic pollution.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, that's massive. That cost me £1 million last year. These are the bits that are going on that people aren't seeing. We've now had to find space at the site to segregate that material, because the operatives don't know how old a sofa is. It's to do with the fire. Stuff like that. So, and the talk is now they're talking about introducing more items into that list, and for us that becomes a real.
Is this like mattresses? I've heard of
mattresses, even things like wires contain it. It's basically most of the things that you see around you would contain it in some way. So it's been a bit of a nightmare for bulky waste collections because they've had to keep this stuff separate from things. It's been it's tough. It has been really tough. So they can't go to landfill anymore. So that was the main thing, was pulling out landfill. So all these, I think if you take these things in sort of like different times and running, trying to change service, when you're sort of hit with quite a few things, and at the moment most of us are running around trying to deal with the outcome of the food waste changing. It's great to have a date. It's great that we've got a date to work towards. There's still lots of concerns over vehicles. There's still lots of concerns over will the manufacturers be able to deliver the bins in time. There's a lot of different things.
What about how you think it's going to be received by the residents?
So from what we can tell, we've done trials in mid-Sussex, and we did trials in Arran, and the residents were very happy and very supportive of it. So when they were surveyed, when they were spoken to, they were all very, very up for having food waste, wanted the food waste. We got quite a lot of questions come from why have we got it already. So I think from that perspective, residents will engage with it. There is when you're doing something like this, there is always the issue of you need to keep the resident engaged.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just roll the service out in year one, put all your money into the year one communications, and then go in year two, well, we've done it, we've given them a bin, we're off now. We ain't going to speak about food waste ever again. There really is this element where you have to sort of continuously drip feed this information and communications to those residents as time goes on.
Yeah, and why would they do something different? I think that's the constant battle, isn't it? I was even talking about even like in my family, because we were looking at doing a challenge at Permasurf, which we're still going to do, where we're going to all do food waste for a week, and we're all going to implement something to reduce that waste each week. Because I used to have very minimal food waste in my house until I had a 2.5-year-old. Well, a baby. He didn't arrive at 2.5, because he produces so much food waste. And I was like, this is ridiculous. So we all want to make different changes. Like, do I need to do better menus for the week? Do I need to make better amounts? I think there's a lot of stuff that can be changed. So we're all going to try something different. But as soon as I started this process, I looked at it differently. But then I was thinking, okay, now I've got to do something different. Why? How do you get people to engage with that? Because a lot of people are just going to go, I can't be bothered.
Yeah, I was obviously when I was driving here today, I was sort of thinking, what's going to come up? What am I going to talk about? How am I going to explain things and stuff like that? And I sort of, for me, I come up with sort of this analogy of, I can't remember what we call it, but there's what, you know, you take this block of people as citizens or residents, what you want to call them, and you've got this set of 4 distinct types of residents. Group 1 is your really switched on. We will volunteer. We will speak the good talk. We will, if we hear someone talking about, well, all the waste goes to landfill outside of school, we'll say, no, it doesn't. It doesn't go to landfill. It does this. So they're your core group of people who will spread your message for you. You've then got sort of the second group, and that second group of people are ones who maybe know 60 to 70% of it. They won't necessarily know all the ins and outs, but they'll know enough. So it's not, you don't just base it in the way she can say this group up here know a lot about the council and the services it offers, and the money you pay goes to lots of different things. The second group sort of know roughly what it pays for, and they know how to do things. You then got sort of what I call group 3, which you'd probably maybe even go with. They're the conspiracy people.
Oh, yeah.
No matter what you say, you will never convince them. You know, you could talk them through it, take them to your facility, show them exactly where their black bag has gone. They will still never believe what you're telling them. And at the very end, you've got the people just don't care. And then you'll never... So you don't waste any time on the don't cares at the end, because no matter what you do, they will really will know. Some of the conspiracy type people, you might be able to convert into sort of that second group through your drip feeding of information. At some stage, they might see the bigger picture, and obviously you'll move some from 2 into group 1. So you sort of try and pick where you're going to do your information to. So I think most people want to do the right thing. They will. What you'll see is you'll be chucking away food waste, and you'll be going, in the first few weeks, you'll go, wow. Because remember, this will be in a separate bin. The moment you chuck it in your black sack, your black sack goes in your bin outside, it's forgotten about. You'll start chucking stuff away, and you'll go, wow, I didn't realise I was chucking away half a loaf of bread a week or something. So there'll be a change in behaviour from some people who will make that decision to well, I'm not going to buy that now. I'm going to put some in the freezer and stuff like that. So we've got a good, all the councils have got they've got a tough job on their hands to try and interact with their residents, make them aware of all the changes, but also help them to, don't forget you can batch freeze, don't forget you can cook to batch freeze, don't forget you can freeze half flavour bread, don't forget you can do this, don't forget you can do that. And
educating.
There's that whole education is going to have a big impact, and not just at the point where the food waste bin is delivered. This pre-work needs to be done to try and ramp up towards it, and then continuously. And unfortunately, whether I like it or not, because budgets have been so tight for everybody, the nice to have the leaflets, the advertising once or twice a year in a magazine from your local council, that gets kicked off the end. I certainly was part of the changes 15 years ago where the waste communication team was the one that got let go. I think at one point Aaron was pretty much the only people who still had a communication group in the whole of West Sussex, as a team. So what's happened, West Sussex have picked up a lot of that now. We do some good work. We work with Waste Buster at the schools. They're really, really, really good. Talking to children and doing different events and stuff. But there is still a big place for us. And then you get involved. Then you look at industry now. So your supermarkets and the way they behave and the way they do things, that also now suddenly becomes part of that process as well. So the education starts from the moment you pick up the item to the moment that you sort of dispose of it. And there's obviously other things that are coming through. The extended producer responsibility will have an impact on different things. So there's a lot going on at the same time. Some of it drives some other stuff. So I think we've got deposit return scheme at some stage, which will come. And
will it? Well,
I think
it will.
It will come, but whether I like it or not, it's difficult for me because West Sussex has a recycling facility that we built as part of our contract many years ago, and pretty much something like 92% of the material we put through that facility is recycled. It's really high quality. So we've got a really good process already. We capture a lot of that stuff that's going to be in a DRS scheme already. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out sort of with it. But I suspect it will come because I think without these things, the government don't reach their carbon bits and stuff, which...
It's frustrating because I think on the DRS side, we all sort of hark back to, I certainly hark back to the 1970s when my grandma used to send me back to the shop with a pop bottle and I get, 10p or whatever it was. And we all sort of remember that and say how great it was. But I think you have to remember that back then we didn't have any kind of recycling system at all. That was it. So it worked really well because that's all there was. Now for domestic curbside in particular, we've got really mature, really well-performing systems for collecting that stuff. The challenge still is in communal and public spaces to capture that recycling. But I do fear that DRS is going to sort of trash curbside recycling to get some benefits in the public and communal realms. So I'm not really sure that it's the right answer. I could be wrong, but I'm not entirely convinced by DRS, given where we are currently.
I think the worry is from a sort of disposal and collection place is that you could see things move into a position where the councils end up collecting what you call the dross, the really hard to deal with stuff, and then industry takes out
takes the good stuff.
The idea that a can is really easy to recycle, can be recycled over and over and over again. A glass bottle can be, but not that glass bottles really, but mostly tins and cans in it. But we then get left with rubbish basically. But I mean, in fairness, 70% of what we collect in West Sussex is paper.
Oh, really?
Paper's such a high amount of what we get, but our paper goes off to a paper mill. And actually, when I went there to visit the facility to see how it worked, it was really impressive. But actually, what you could see was they had a deal with Morrison's across the road, and literally any cardboard box that went back, so packaging, literally, within 48 hours was turned around back into a box. When you look at that, you sort of go, and they were showing us some of the work they were still doing on testing different materials to make paper, and actually, they haven't actually found anything better than what they've got.
Because only so many times paper can be recycled, though, isn't there?
Yeah,
but it gets turned into something else because it's the recycled content part of the box.
It's the virgin. It's the virgin being mixed with the old, sort of, to make it think. There's always enough in circulation to keep it. I don't think they were using even any virgin stuff anymore.
This was my history packaging. That's what I used to do. My knowledge in boxes has now gradually been replaced by garden waste. But I unfortunately still have a lot of grey matter filled with boxes and corrugated and paper recycling, and how it all gets put together. But that's really, I love that idea that it goes in and then gets made into something else in such a beautiful journey.
It was really impressive. It was a really impressive process, and actually the process for making paper has actually changed a great deal. That's the weird thing about it. It's actually not and for us now, I guess the main bit that's hitting us at the end is going to be the emissions trading scheme. Is obviously a big concern. The amount of money it's likely to cost us to run services to deliver that, and going to get an additional chunky bill at the end of it. And obviously I've spoken to my colleagues who are looking at big bills as well for that, and it's hard to see what the, I sort of look, if you look back, and I wasn't involved in it a great deal at the time, but if you got the business case to build a material recycling facility, your starting point was, right, I've got 200,000 tonnes of waste, and I'm putting 200,000 tonnes of waste in landfill, and that cost me a gate fee, and it cost me landfill tax, and the landfill tax is going to go up every year. So if I index it up, so you've got this high level cost. If I was to build a MRF and take 60,000 of that 200,000 out and put it in that MRF, I won't pay the landfill gate fee, I won't pay the landfill tax, and my MRF gate fee is going to be much cheaper. And by the way, at the end of it, we'll sell the material and get some income back as well. So whoever got to write that business case in those early days had a fantastic time, because you couldn't lose, basically. Where we're sort of moving towards now is there's no good answers. We're now trying to recycle and deal with items that are low volume, high cost to dispose of. So if you take something like a nappy, there's been so many talks about nappy recycling and stuff like that. Well, look how much bit is you charge for a nappy. What are you going to do if it will cost you more to recycle it than it will to purchase it? So does the manufacturer put that price on a nappy? I think there's one place in Wales I know that does it, but it's not all over the place. We have that with lots of materials, batteries. So these are materials that are coming through, but there's just no real market. So of course, when you're looking for the alternative, we're going to be going to EFW at some stage, but that's where we're going to get taxed. So what,
yeah, I mean,
replacement.
The suggestion is that landfill tax is going to hit sort of 170, 175 quid, isn't it? Just to stop it being cheaper than the emissions cost. So, wow. You're going to end up with this perverse situation where landfill looks like the cheap option. And that's the only way I can see they're going to avoid that is to put landfill tax up.
And obviously it's gone up this year. Was it next? I can't remember it kicked in this year or last next year. It might be next year it kicks in, but they went up by quite a substantial amount. £20 a tonne.
And that's
wow.
Yeah, and that's going to hit the local taxpayer, isn't it? I mean, that's where the landfill tax is going to land. So yeah, I'm quite interested, Gareth, speaking to you from a sort of from the county perspective. How do you work in a two-tier system? How do you actually help the districts and the boroughs to give you the materials that you need? As you've already alluded to, it's not going to be it's a step change for you to move from MBT to AD.
Yeah.
But it can't be a step change for local authorities, particularly when you've got 6 or 7 of them, to all move to separate food collections on one day and start rolling in the trucks separately. How do you square that circle? So
we're part of what we call the West Sussex Waste Partnership.
Yeah.
We've all the district and borough councils are on that sort of group. I think the one good thing with this is that the government have set a deadline on food waste. It's not like they've gone, we want you to do food at some in the next 5 or 10 years. Recycling sort of was a bit of a slow burner. So we've all got a date to work towards. And obviously what we're really doing is we have quite a few meetings with that group of people. West Sussex picks up all the disposal costs. So we provide all the infrastructure and covers all the disposal costs. So that was sort of signed up to in the early days. So there is no real route for the district and borough to sort of say, So a lot of different authorities that some people retain their material. So the recyclable material, for example, some local authorities keep that, don't give it to the county council, and they get paid or whatever, pay a smaller gate fee. We've always paid all the disposal costs for it. So it makes it relatively easy when something like this happens. But yeah, the issue of them not being able to roll out all the flats at the same time. And then your conversations start moving towards, actually, would it be more beneficial for us to pay some money to help them along, to G it along a bit? But of course, at an officer level, I could have a thought that actually throwing them a bone will help us out, and in the long run, it will make a big difference. But every council's, it's no secret, is it? Every council's in financial difficulties at the moment, and actually, what would you rather have? Money in the bank now, or money in the bank in 5 years? And there's never a guarantee, because 5 years ago I'd said, if we don't do that, we're not going to say we've saved money in 5 years' time. Well, if I said that 5 years ago, we'd now be coming out to a point where ETS is about to come in, and that money I've said would be a saving wouldn't be a saving.
Yeah.
So between the sort of the politicians and the senior leaders, they've got some really difficult decisions to make about how that progresses. And, it then becomes well, are you making a decision based on what I need now? Or am I making a decision based on, actually, if I do this in a different way, it will help us over the next 10 years, but I won't see a return for 5 years. So I think a lot of councils are in the same sort of boat, but we work quite well with the Waste Partnership. The officers are all pretty dedicated to try and make this work, and basically learning and working with each other and helping each other through sort of like different challenges that each of us is having.
I work in collections. That's where I'm at. So, and quite a few of the West Sussex councils use our software. So I do sort of see the issues that they've got in roll out, particularly for the communal collections. What we always sort of almost dismissively called hard to reach. We've put them to one side and sort of focused on the curbside, because that's been the low hanging fruit for getting tonnages up. But I think when we spoke to Hayley a while ago in Hounslow, and they've been doing food waste since I think 2009, so a very long time, and they found it really, really difficult to actually move the needle on the participation rates and the tonnages that have been put out. So I think I have some hope that having a sort of a consistent and national approach to food waste will actually help to sort of raise the awareness of it and make it more of a cultural thing that we do. But I do think it's, as you said right at the beginning, collecting food waste does not translate to needing fewer trucks for refuse, particularly as the government have completely hamstrung collection authorities by saying you can only do it fortnightly. When the obvious thing to do is to say, here's the carrot of a food bin, and the stick is you're only getting your refuse collected 3 weekly, and that does actually help to balance that and reduce the number of trucks you need and so on. But that's been taken away. So effectively, you've given the resident an extra food bin and no real push to have to use it.
It's a funny one, because I worked at Arran for a long time, tried to make changes to services there at a time when because we're there. So basically the service at Arran is a weekly sack collection, up to 5 sacks a week, no bin. Before I left 8 years ago, I wrote the new contract. We were looking at trying to move forward, and so to cut waste down, improve the recycling rate and save money. Members didn't want to do that at the time. They've now got to a position where they'll change their service, but actually in a funny way, they're actually in a really strong position, because they could go 2 weekly, but actually when they deliver the resident refuse bin, give them a smaller bin. So 5 years ago, you'd have gone automatically, you'd have done fortnightly 240. You could actually go 2 weekly, so you're still recognising the fact that it's only 2 weekly, not 3 weekly. But if you give them a smaller bin at a 160 or a 180, you've actually shrunk down the size of what they can have as well. Whereas obviously those authorities who have bins out there, you can't say to a council, well, I'll tell you what, as part of the service change, why don't you pick up the 50,000 bins that you've got out there and place more of a smaller one? That would just it'd be horrendous.
And the difficulty with that, of course, is that if you go around and pick up 140 litre bins fortnightly, you need exactly the same resources to pick up 2 40-litre bins fortnightly. It's just a smaller bin. Like you say, you can divert half of the waste out of the grey bin and put it in a food bin. You've still got to drive the truck down every single street and pick up every single bin. It's just not as heavy. So you might save the odd tip. You might squeeze a bit out of your routes, but you're not going to squeeze very much out. And, really the only way to make a really big dent in the vehicle resources that you need and the crew resource you need is to go to a 3-weekly collection for most authorities that are currently doing.
Is that the concept
fortnightly
that I read about the other day, the 3-2-1? So you do weekly food waste, fortnightly recycling, and then 3-weekly
refuse. Yeah,
I actually think that sounds good. Because I don't think normal people know how much in your normal bin is food. I don't think they know the percentage that's in there, so they automatically think, oh, I'm going to have a stinking bin and it's going to be full because I already fill it now and it's only collectible. But I actually think you take out food and actually start recycling better, you will be able to do it. And it does force then that, like Tim just said, it forces you because you don't have...
if you spin the question around, I had this sort of little conversation with Dave Maiden a while ago. What goes in the grey bin? What is there that you can't recycle that isn't food? There's precious little if you really think about it. So if people are going to make the effort, and that's the key, if people are going to make the effort to recycle, what goes in the grey bin? There's not a lot.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I know David. He was a biffer for a long time when I was at Aaron. So I met David in my early days, 20-odd years ago. So he was one of the first people I met. It was working for Verdant at the time. So so I do still see him quite a few. I did see you happen in your podcast. But yeah, I mean, like, it's my bin at home. So what would I have? Well, we've got 3 cats, so that always produces pet food.
Yeah.
But, there's a conscious decision. Do I buy it in a tin that can be recycled? Do I buy it in a pouch? We buy it in a pouch for ease. Things like crisp packets and you start thinking about the sort of the items you're talking about, and that totally sort of leads me on to the next bit, I guess. Flexible plastics. I'm worried. I'm seriously worried. So I went to the LARAT conference in Wales. We had the person there from the Flex Collect project giving us some information about the trials they've been doing. Because I have a MRF, the only way I've got to do it really is to do a survival bag into the MRF and then put it out. But they were sort of suggesting that the average resident on the trial was chucking away 237 grams of plastic film, and you need quite a large stall to put this plastic in. And of course, then once it's compressed down into a bale, it becomes 2 bales.
Is this the like bread bags?
Yeah, so it'd be bread bags.
Because most supermarkets have got a place you put that now.
Yeah, but
I put mine in the coal.
It's going to be. They want us. It's one of the things from the Simple Recyclers that we have to do it by 2027, I think.
Wow,
April 27. Yeah,
big side.
So I think the hope is that people are going to be able to put it into the plastic, isn't it? And it's just going to end up in that waste stream, and you guys are going to sort it out at the disposal end.
Which right?
Surely it's easier just to chuck it in at the supermarket. But I literally will have my bag.
Who goes to the supermarket anymore?
I know, that's the problem.
Me. I do. And we've got a little co-op. They take them as well on our estate.
Yeah, it's a cultural change that we need to make.
Yeah.
You have to recognise those things as value, but the idea that you're going to change the culture of the average British, housewife, house husband, guy who's feeding the cat like I did this morning. The idea that you're going to change the culture of, all of those people in the whole country by April 27, it's not fanciful. You're not going to.
If people are still putting nappies in the recycling bin, we do not stand a chance. That's
well, exactly.
Absolutely baffled.
But also, but there's also an informational. There's an educational. I mean, I'm in the industry. I don't know whether the pouch that my cat. She's not my cat. She's my wife's cat. Let me be very clear. She's not my cat.
Wow.
I have to get that in there. But that pouch, that sort of plasticky, foily thing, I don't know what I can do with that.
Nothing.
I don't know if that should be going in my blue bin or if it should be going in the grey bin.
Don't touch it.
I don't really know.
It's waste. That's the thing. Like Christmas, it's changed.
There was one company who did because the baby pouches are the same.
Yeah.
The food, Freddy's food. I met them at the Zero Waste Award the first year they did it, and they were doing it. So they were collecting them, I think, through Sainsbury's. So you had to return them back to Sainsbury's, and they put them in a bag, and then they would go back and be, I'm assuming, reused as opposed to recycled. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I know that there must be a way, but it probably outweighs the cost of
delivering it.
Delivering it. Yeah,
we used to work years ago with Ford Prison with fat soil and grease, Southern Water. Because obviously fat soil and grease going down the sink and sewers and stuff is a nightmare. Another good visit you might want to do, the water place in Brighton. I believe you can go and visit all the stuff.
Gareth is sorting me out so I can go and educate myself at some of the facilities we've got around here. I really want to do it. Which obviously you're invited as well, Tim, if you want to come and have a look around a few sites.
Apparently they open up the sewers in Brighton way so you can go and look at all the big fat bergs and stuff, because it's a big thing. I mean, I capture all the fat at home in a jar and it goes in the bin. So of course that bin then goes to the facility and gets just basically put them in the waste. But Southern Water were doing this thing with Fort Prison where they were going around collecting it and then turning it into biodiesel and stuff like that years ago. And they've just contacted us again actually about they want to look at it, because obviously for them it's an investment in something that's different. And it does work actually. If you offer people a service, it can work. We've had some really good uptake. So some of our partners do like the coffee pods back.
The coffee pod system. I know some of the guys there, and it's a really good system, but it's taken a long time to get that going, hasn't it? It needed the backing of the manufacturers. It's needed the backing of the supermarkets. I think they've got it to Morrison's now, haven't they? And I know Chichester, one of the early districts to. Yeah,
I was going to name them because they do like a vehicle now which has got pod back, bulky, electricals. They sort of rolled it all into one.
Yeah,
but that is a very
and that's
booking it and doing that. And it's not there's a cost to it, and that's the issue.
Yeah.
Most of this stuff there's a cost to doing it. It's not provided free of charge, and I think probably Tim giving you a plug at Bartek. Actually, you've got quite a. I've sort of was around when Bartek first appeared, and I've always wanted it, Aaron, but I never got it. I was using paper and pen. It used to kill me having 60 odd cruise sheets just to look through for resident stuff. I could never convince them to go in cab, but actually waste data from a customer service perspective, be able to give you customer real time information, doing that all straight away is just so important to stop and kill sort of that customer complaint and stuff. So I know from the operatives and the people that use it in West Sussex, there's a few of them using it now. They really value their information and stuff. So give you there.
Thank you for the plug. Horsham and Chichester and Edron Ways. I think of the three that spring to mind. I hope I'm not missing anybody there. But I think that you've touched on a point there that I think is going to be really important, and that is that the collections industry as a whole, primarily local authorities, has got to get away from trying to avoid contact with residents and actually make contact with residents. Tell them, thank you for putting out your coffee pods, thank you for recycling your food waste, and actually, give some feedback that, yes, we've picked this up, yes, we've done stuff with it.
Yeah.
I with going to sound awful virtue signaling, whenever I give blood, I get a text a couple of days later to tell me where it's gone. And it's a small thing, but you actually know that it's gone somewhere. It hasn't just been chucked in the river. So, if you pick up someone's food waste and then a couple of days later you say, this is an Instagram post of a truck rolling out, and there's 8 tons of waste that we collected from this part of the borough, and that's going to save this much CO2. It's a bit of feedback that, well, I've put this waste into the chain, and it starts to just chip away at that feeling that it's a waste of time. It
made a bit of a difference, doesn't it? And that you actually...
Yeah, and you can do that stuff without any cost. Once you set it up, it just pings out the messages and the emails, and, it's what every retailer on the planet is doing. As soon as you order something, you get a thank you for the order, and then you get how are you enjoying it, and would you like to buy another one? So why are we not using that model?
The ease of I even thought of the other day actually when I ordered something from John Lewis, and I got the message to say got your order, and then it's out for delivery, and it was delivered, and I had all these things. I was I didn't even have to think about it. I I enjoyed that process as a consumer.
Yeah.
I think councils are trying. I think where councils struggle is that they've got this. When you're a customer buying an item, you can sort of have stuff imposed on you. So if the company said, I'm trying to think of an example, if they said from that, Coca-Cola turned around tomorrow and said, from now on, you can't write to us. If you want to contact us, you must do an online form. That's what you have to do to contact us. And a lot of them have done that over the past years. When you're a local authority, that's really difficult to move. So if you think, so I started 20 years ago and the contact was mostly letter. And it was mostly older people who would write you a letter. If you said to someone now with no interest, I used to get that email you've got there used to be a letter in the old days. They'd be like, a letter. No one says a letter anymore. So he gradually moved from letter and he sort of moved to email. And what the difference with email made was that everyone expects an instant answer. So you make some ways to complain. You think about and give them this response that you put a lot of effort into. And within 3 seconds of you sending that email, they've gone, I don't agree. So you've got that on, and then it was telephone, and then it was backed up with telephone calls. Now we're moving into the realm of. So I know you work with Cloud9, done the integration with us. We've got the Cloud9 app. For those residents who want to work with us on an app, can do. There's still a big chunk of people who don't. So I've got the booking system for refuse collections. Sorry, not for refuse collections, booking for the waste sites. Really successful. It has something like a 98% book online rate. I'm still running. I have a call centre that takes waste calls, who I have to pay money to take phone calls from the 2% of people who don't do it online. And actually, at some stage, what point do you get to and go, we're going to close off those phone calls now. If you want to use the recycling centre, you must do it online.
There was someone we spoke to, wasn't there, who did that? Who was that?
So, Harrow were one of the first ones to, when they did their first, it was Ben Jones.
Ben Jones, that's it.
Yeah, and I think when they started looking at this back in, I was involved in Harrow back in 2009, 2010, they had, literally hundreds of phone lines into the council for different things. And they basically got rid of most of them. So it's virtually impossible to ring the council now because they've moved everything online. I think actually the reason for that at the time was sound because it was all around reducing avoidable contact. But for me, the world has spun around now. And yes, the councils are running a monopoly service, but actually we're trying now to get customers to do something that they don't naturally want to do. We're trying to get them to recycle. We're trying to get them to segregate their waste. We're trying to get them to think more about it rather than just tossing it in the bin. So you can't just say, we've got a monopoly service. They've got to do as we tell them. To your point about Coca-Cola would never turn away customer contact because they'd be terrified of doing that. And actually, councils now have to make themselves accessible to residents to actually persuade them to pay for garden waste, to pay for a bit extra for their collection because it's a POPs item. You've got to actually be appealing to residents, and that means that you've got to promote contact, not avoid it. So I think the turning off the phone lines from an efficiency point of view and a point of view of being able to get everything to a workflow makes sense because phone lines are a nightmare from that. People just ring randomly and they talk about 3 things at once, and it's really difficult to process. But I think actually email is now starting to look pretty old hat. Like I said, Cloud9 is one sort of example of that. Embarrassingly, I pranged my car this morning, and doubly embarrassing. It was due in for a repair because my wife pranged it last week. So I had to ring the insurance company sheepishly. This morning I rung them sheepishly and said, I've pranged my car, but actually it's already booked in for a repair. Can you just add it to the existing repair? And they said, oh yeah, no problem. And the whole thing has been done by WhatsApp. They just said, we'll send you a WhatsApp message, send us all the pictures. And I've had this back and forth directly with the repair company who've now got all the images and it's all in hand.
Yeah.
But they've actually pushed me to a very interactive, almost like a phone call, but a very interactive instant reply system. Whereas I think 5 years ago, they'd want it on an email or an online form. The world is coming back to that. We are in this sort of Snapchat, Instagram generation where we expect things to be instant. So it is interesting that more retailers are moving to the WhatsApp sort of channel and having that, the online chat, which is almost back to the phone lines.
Yeah, we've been looking at the online chat and filtering out. Well, John wants to remove the our main number off of everything so that people don't call in.
We don't have a phone number.
We don't now, apparently.
We got rid of ours a year and a half ago.
Oh, really?
And guess what? Nobody noticed.
Yeah,
The only people that noticed.
And John's quite rightly said, it's mostly the energy companies and people cold calling us that are using that.
Yeah, those are the people that noticed.
Yeah.
We employed a person who answered the phone. We then decided that because that was costing us an FTE, and basically they were only here 7 hours a day, and they went holidays and all the rest of it. So actually we moved that to an outsourced service, which was costing us about £600 a month. And when I looked at the call logs, all they were doing was turning away people who were going to reduce our business rates and get us cheaper energy. So we just switched off the phones. There is a phone line that is not advertised for our help desk. So if you're a customer, the phone number's in our software. You can get that straight away. But nobody else can ring us. You've got to phone us. You've got to text us or email us or whatever. Or if you're very, very fortunate, you might get my mobile number.
Oh, I feel very privileged.
You've only got one of my mobile numbers.
I've only got one of them. I've got the work one, haven't I?
Well, it's personal.
Yeah.
I know. We're obviously not that close of friends.
No.
That's what it is.
No.
See, I made the stupid decision to merge the two phones together when I first started. Yeah, and now that's it. It's my only number.
One number, and it's my own number.
Yeah.
I mean, Cloud9, Jason spoke to us the other week, and they're sort of moving now to this AI bit as well, where if you're a resident and you've got an item and not quite sure what to do with it, you'll be able to hold it up to your phone and the phone will tell you what bin it goes in.
That's been wanted for a long time. I remember having a conversation with Colin at West Sussex. He used to go around the schools and things and tell them where to put recycling. And he came to us with this vision of scanning an item and then knowing where to put it. But we had to link to a barcode company.
So, now you're able to recognise it, and as long as it's in the system, because the AI's moved on so much, it's possible. Yeah. So if you're scanning it for the first time, you'll tell it which bin it goes in and it changes it.
I just think that's amazing. It must be a game changer, surely, because I've often stood at the bin going, is this okay to recycle?
There are certain things you can... And that is where you get to the issue, because you can scan a picture of a coffee jar and, the AI will say, oh, it's a coffee jar. But actually it's then got to tell you that the lid goes one place, the label goes another place, the jar goes another place. So some items are potentially more complex than others. Yeah. So a Coke can is a single item. So you can say, that goes in the brown bin in Barnsley. That's the other bit. You've got to know locally what colour bin that maps to, which is all doable. It's when you get the multi-part items, where you've got something that's got sort of 2 or 3 bits that you might need to recycle separately, that then you've got to explain to the resident. Again, it's a little bit more complex. Yeah,
because I was looking at cleaning products. I look at cleaning products a lot. I love cleaning products. And the bottle part is recyclable, but obviously you have to take off the things. It's got metal, plastic, everything in the trigger. Yeah. And TerraCycle, I think, were collecting those for a bit. But I don't know if they still do.
Because even if
it's only recyclable, if it's empty, that's the other thing you've got to get across. If it's half full, we don't want it in the recycling.
Yeah.
I think the thing is, if it took you a year or two to make that system work perfectly for your area, by the time you've got it all sorted out, it's there then. It's done, and it's that investment of how much investment and time do you put in to say that actually would be really, really handy. And it's like our recycling pages that we offer on West Sussex website are the most used pages in the whole of West Sussex. Yeah, interesting. Our website is used a lot by people to get information on. So it's putting all that work in up front to make it workable, and it will be positive in the long run.
Like I says, keep an eye on the Bartek website for the next 6 months.
We'll see. Ooh.
Let's get a banner.
No, we
coming soon.
Yeah. Plug alert. Yeah.
We very rarely do plugs.
I've plugged about things. So
yeah. You don't have to apologise at all. We just, it just never normally comes up, does it? Oh, that's exciting. I'm intrigued now, Tim.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say one of our friends, John Emwright, as we've probably seen on LinkedIn, is not very well at the moment, is going through some treatment. So I just wanted to say to you, John, we're all thinking of you and hope you get well soon. And I'm looking forward to catching up with you.
Oh. Perfect.
So that's all of us. Yeah, all the best.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much for joining us today, Gareth. It's been really interesting to learn about everything, get to know you a bit better, see you at all the events, and it's been nice to learn a bit more. And lovely to see you, as ever, Tim, on the screen today. And I'll catch up with you. Oh, there's no more events, is there? So it'll be next year now.
Yes, there are. Yes, there are. We've got the Health and Safety Conference coming up next week, and the week after that, we're at the Collections Conference.
Ah, well, that's you.
Yeah, that's a plug for Bartek, sorry.
That's a Bartek one. Permiso will not be there, unfortunately. Our next one is January, a webinar, again, on garden waste. But we'll chat about that another time, so I want to get your involvement in that. Cool. Okay, well, let's go get coffee.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you, Gareth.